Hi, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to use Photoshop to create a movie poster. But before you get started, there's a number of things that you're going to want to get, and you can download these from the Google Drive folder that I've shared with you. So first of all, you've got the credit block. You're going to want to go and take a photo of yourself that you are going to use in your poster. And you need to, when you take this photo, you need to make sure that the lighting is correct. We've got a background, so I've got a sky photo that I'm going to use for the background. I've got a setting photo that I'm going to use for the foreground, and I need a studio logo as well, and there's a folder of studio logos that you can select from, but try to choose the studio that is going to make the type of film that you're creating a poster for here. So before you get started in Photoshop, just make sure that you've got all of those 5 things. Now here in Photoshop, when I'm wanting to create a poster, I want it to be A3. So when I click on, first thing I'm going to do is click on New File. And then here I've already selected this in a previous file that I've created here. But if you can't see that, if you go at the top there to where it says Print and View All Presets, you'll find A3 right there, and that'll do all the measuring for you. So select that and hit Create. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to introduce the photo that we've taken of ourselves, or a character in our film, and we're going to select that person and replace the background. So I'm going to go back to my folder here, and I've got the photo of me, and I'm just going to drag that straight into Photoshop. And we are introduced to this file which has these blue lines around it. So basically you've got these sliders in the corners, and if you just click and drag with those sliders, you can use that to resize that image and reposition it wherever you want. Once you're happy with that, you'll hit the Enter key or Return key if you're using a Mac, and that's going to place that image inside that Photoshop file. Now you'll notice that I have adjusted the lighting when I've created this photo. I've also taken the photo against a plain background, and that's really important. It's going to be super helpful for when it comes time to selecting it. If you're using Photoshop for the first time, there's a number of things that you need to be aware of. Over on the left hand side here we have the tool bar with some of the tools that we're going to be using in this tutorial. So when I refer to tools, these are the things that I'm referring to. Over on the right hand side here down the bottom we have the layers panel, and so this is going to be super important. When you're using Photoshop, you need to understand layers. We're going to be creating a bunch of them in this tutorial. If you can't see either of those things, or if you want to open up a panel at any time, up the top here, if you go to the window menu, you can see that there are all the panels there, and you can turn them on and off. But we're definitely going to want the tools panel, and we're definitely going to want the layers panel. Okay, and you can see there when I've added my photo, it's created a layer, and it's automatically given it a name. I can rename that if I want to, just by clicking on that. And it's good to name your layers just so you stay organized. Okay, so here we have a person, namely me, and we want to select that person. We're going to, so that we can replace the background, I'm going to put my sky image in the background, and I can introduce that now, so just dragging and dropping it into Photoshop and resizing it so that it fills the frame, and I might want to lose that land in the background there, so just resize it until it fills up the frame. So currently, now that we've introduced that, you can see that that's all we can see. We can't see the photo of me anymore, and if you look down in the layers panel, it's because the sky layer is above the character layer. So I can just drag and drop that down, and then we're going to be able to see the character again. Think of these layers like a stack of paper. We're only going to be able to see whatever's on the top, unless it's see-through, unless it's transparent, and we're going to do that to some of these layers as well. So making sure that the character layer is selected, we now want to go over to the Tools panel, and we want to find the object selection tool, which is this guy here. If you can't see it, any of these tools that has that little triangle in the corner, if you click and hold, you'll find that there's a number of different options for that particular tool. So we want the object selection tool. This is a new tool in Photoshop and it's a really clever one. It uses AI to select what it thinks is an object. And you can see there that just by dragging it on top of me, it's automatically suggesting that I am an object worthy of selection. So if I click on that, you'll see that it has selected me. We've got these, what we call marching ants around the outside, that dotted line to show that I'm selected. If you're using an older computer, this might take a little bit of a time, but just be patient, it'll work. So once that's selected, we now want to refine that selection. So I'm going to go up the top here to the select and mask window, and I'm going to click on that button, and you'll see it'll open me up in this new kind of panel, this new window. I want to make sure that this object aware mode is selected. So if it's not, make sure that you select that. And if you go at the top here to view mode, you'll see that you can see what I look like over different, over a plain black background, over a plain white background. So you want to select something where you're going to be able to show if there's any things missing in that selection. And I can see if I've selected on black, I can automatically see that if you look at my hair, you can still see some of the white background behind me showing through. So we're going to refine that. Up the top of the screen there, you'll see we get this option for refine hair. I'm going to click on that. And if you watch what happens to my hair, you can see that that's made an improvement, but it's also, you know, it's done something weird to the top of my head there. So I can zoom in here, and if you want to zoom, you can just use the Control plus and minus keys, and I'm going to want to come up here to my hair. So what it's done, it's kind of removed that white background, but there must have been some kind of reflection on my forehead or something there, so it's kind of given me this weird grey area over the top there. And you can see also around the edge of my face here, there's still some of that white background layer showing through. So we're going to refine that. So up the top of the screen here, we just want to make sure that the Refine Edge Brush tool is selected. And we want it to, so if we want to add to the area that's been selected, we want the tool that has the little plus symbol. If we want to take away, we want the minus. So we want to select the add button, and this is a brush. At the moment you can see it's really small. So we want to make that bigger, and I can do that by just using the square brackets on the keyboard. We don't want to make it too big. So I think what I need to do there is take that away. You can see there that if I've removed that area that's been selected, it's telling Photoshop, hey, no, keep these bits because we still want them. Around the side of my head there, if I do that, it's going to add more of that white. So I want to add the plus, and that's going to, but see what's happening, we're kind of taking too much away. So it's a matter of resizing my brush, making it really, really small. I can even zoom in a little bit more there. And I just want to go around the edge there and just kind of refine that. Okay, so currently that's looking pretty good. When I am happy with that, I want to scroll down the bottom corner here. I want to select Output to Layer Masks. Now what that's going to do, it's going to keep the part that's been selected visible and get rid of the part that isn't selected. It'll still theoretically be there, but we just won't be able to see it. So Output to Layer Mask, click OK, and there I am gazing off into the beautiful blue sky. Okay, great. So that's the first part done. That's the background done. Now, before we move on, we are just going to merge these layers, kind of join them together. So what you can do is, if you're using a Windows computer, if you hold down Shift, Control, Alt and E, that'll merge those layers and add them to a new layer. If I'm on a Mac, which I am, I'm going to use Shift, Command, Option and E, and you can see there that that's now created a new layer. I've still got those old layers there, which, you know, if we want to go back and change anything, we have that option, but otherwise I've got this new layer that I can play with. Okay, next we are going to blend together the background and the foreground. So I've got my setting file here. For the purpose of this task, I've selected this setting which has a bit more kind of structure to it, because I want to just kind of demonstrate how to manipulate that a little bit more. I've got this tree over on the right here that's got its chopped off, so I'm going to resize that image so that it's going to blend a little bit better with the background layer. So I'm just going to resize that by dragging the corners, move it around, and when I'm happy, I'm going to hit enter. And then you can see there, I've got the setting layer over the top of the background layer. Now what I'm going to do here is add a layer mask. So I'm going to click on this button down the bottom here that says add layer mask. I'm going to select that. And what you can see there on the layer is it's created this white layer over the top of the layer that I've already selected there, and it's basically, think of this like a white filter, like it's a filter. Anywhere I paint on this filter, so if I just grab a paintbrush here and make sure that my foreground color is black, if I paint on this layer with black, you'll see that it'll remove it. If I paint on this layer with white, it'll put it back again. All right, pretty straightforward stuff. So in order to blend these two together, if I select a gradient tool over here, so this one here is the gradient tool, and I want to make sure that that's a linear gradient tool, so make sure that this button up the top, linear gradient, is selected and that we're going from black to white. Then when I select that part of the image, sorry, I went the wrong way, then you'll see that that'll blend it together. If you look over on the layer mask here, you'll see that I've painted part of that layer white and part of that layer black, and the white bit is what we can see and the black bit is what we can't see. But I've taken too much of that foreground layer away, so I'm just going to try that again and maybe again until I get it to a point where it kind of blends together nicely. So you might want to experiment with this a little bit. All right, and we can refine this with a brush, which is what we're going to do in a second. Okay. All right, so now that I've kind of created that blend, I can refine that by, again, selecting my brush tool. If I want to add the image back, I just want to make sure that the white foreground color is selected. And if I want to make sure that I've got a nice kind of fuzzy edge to that brush, so that when I paint it, it's going to be a bit more of a subtle kind of blend there. So if I go, let's go with those trees over there, but maybe I accidentally go and take too much away, I can then change those to pick up the black as my foreground color, and I can just kind of blend those a bit more smoothly. All right. Okay, so there we go. So that's using a layer mask to create a blend between the background and the foreground image. Next, we are going to use something called an adjustment layer to change the color ultimately. So in this, say I want to make this black and white, I'm going to create a new adjustment layer, and there's a couple of different things I can do here. I can change the color, I can change the levels in terms of the light and the exposure and the brightness and the contrast. First of all, I'm going to make this black and white. Okay, so you can see there that what it's done is it's created a new layer, and this layer is like a filter. It's going to filter anything that's underneath it. So if I turn that on and off, you'll see that it's just basically filtering the image beneath it. And then what you'll see here is this properties panel opens up, and we can kind of get these sliders where I can adjust that layer to make it look how I want it to look. I can select auto and see what it does, but that may or may not improve the image. I can also adjust these different sliders here, and you'll see that, you know, anywhere in my original image where there's red, it's going to adjust the red tones, the yellow tones, the green tones, and the blue tones. So you can have a muck around with those until you get the kind of look that you want for your image. And we might add a little bit of a tint to it, so it's not purely black and white. And I can do that by clicking that little tint button there. And I can select just a kind of a tone to go over the top of it. You can make it subtle. I might make mine look a little bit colder, so I might use more of a blue tone for that. And click OK when you're done. I might want to add another layer mask and maybe play with the contrast there a little bit, just to increase the contrast there, just to make it a bit more dramatic. Add some darker tones to my poster, because I'm making more of kind of a thriller here. So when you're happy with that, it's time to move on. Before we do move on, I'm just going to go down here to now that I'm looking at it, I feel like I should be a little bit bigger in the photo, so I can go down and select that layer of me. If I want to resize that at any time, I can hit Control T on a PC on Windows, or Command T if I'm using a Mac, and I'm just going to resize that to make me a little bit kind of bigger in the frame. Okay, next we're going to add some text, which is important to a movie poster. First of all, we're going to add the credit block. So I've downloaded that file there. I'm going to double click it. Now, before you add this, it's important that you have installed this font, otherwise the credit block won't work, and there's instructions on how to do that in that folder. But the credit block there, you can see it PSD, it's a Photoshop file. So if I just double click that, it'll open in a new window in Photoshop. And there it is, it's just a big block of text. And you can see that it's got the different people who are normally in a credit block, and you are able to change these names by just selecting the type tool, making sure we're in the type layer here, and we're going to make this a Paramount. I hope I've got the right logo for that. Paramount Pictures presents a, and you can go through and change all the people's names, change the movie title. I'm going to call this, what's a nice name? I'm going to call this Longing. All right. It doesn't matter what names you put. You can put your name, you can put your friend's name, you can put your teacher's name, you can put whatever you like, but you're going to want to go through and change those names. Once that's done, we just want to make sure that this layer is selected. I'm going to copy that, so Control C in Windows or Command C on a Mac. I'm going to go back into my poster and I'm going to paste that, so Command V or Control V. Put that credits layer up the top so it's not affected by those filters. I want to resize it, so I'm going to hit Command or Control T, and I want to drag that out until it is the same length as the poster, and I'm going to drag that down the bottom there. Now, if you find that you can't see it, maybe that your background is white and you can't see the white text, you can have the option, if you highlight that text and go to, we might need to open up the character panel. You can see there that you have the option of manipulating that text. So if it's easier to be seen in black, which it's not in this instance, or maybe blue, I can change the color of that text to make it stand out. I like to keep mine white. And so I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay, we're going to now add more text. So I'm going to come over here to the horizontal type tool. I'm going to select that, and let's add firstly I need to get rid of that. Let's add a title to our poster. Now when I click with the type tool, it'll start with the type that I've used previously. So in this case, it's that weird kind of text that I've used for the credit block. But I'm going to just type in the title, and now I can use this panel up here, the character panel, to change the font. Because I'm making more of a romance here, I'm going to choose a bit more of kind of like a curly cursive font. I can change the size of that font. I can change the color of that font. Okay, so then it's just a matter of moving that around using the move tool, making sure that I've selected that font with the type tool anytime I want to manipulate it. You can make the text higher or shorter. You can space the letters farther apart or closer together. So just use those different settings to manipulate that title until you are happy with it, and make sure that you place it somewhere. If you want to get a little bit more fancy with that, you'll notice too that every time I grab that type tool and click somewhere on my poster, it's going to create a new layer. And the layer will be called whatever it is that you're typing. So that should just be a pretty easy way to organize things. If you want to add a little bit more texture to your title, go down here to add a layer style, make sure that layer is selected, and I can choose any of these options. Let's go with bevel and emboss. You can see there that creates like a 3D effect on the text that you can manipulate using these sliders. You might also want to add a drop shadow by selecting that button down the bottom. And I'll just make sure that layer, that option is selected, and then I can literally drag that on the poster to wherever I want. It just kind of makes that title stand out a little bit more, which is what you want in a title. And then we want to add the other text to our movie poster. So you're going to want to add actors' names, you're going to add a tagline, and you're going to want to add a release date down the bottom. Okay, so there you go. That's looking pretty good. Don't forget, you can also add critics' quotes. You can add more actors' names. You can add awards to make it look like your film's won the Cannes Film Festival, if you want to add more text to that poster. Okay, lastly, the last thing that we're missing is a studio logo. So in that folder that I've shared with you, there are a number of different ones that you can choose from. I've got Paramount here, and these are all transparent PNG files. So you'll see that when I drag that in there, it doesn't have a background, which is pretty helpful. We want to make that pretty small, because if you have a look at a movie poster, you'll see that those studio logos are pretty small, but you can see what's happened there is now it's black, we can't see it. So we want to recolor that to make it visible. Now, so for this layer, I'm going to add a layer mask, and I'm going to add solid color. And you can see that what's happened is that has applied that layer mask to that entire poster. Don't worry about that just for the minute. I'm going to make that white. I'm going to click OK. Now I want to apply this layer mask just to that one layer. So if I right click on that, go down to create clipping mask, you'll see that will apply that color fill just to my studio logo that I've added down the bottom there. and I can now drag that. If I just Control T, I have a bit more choice over where I want it. Like studio logos on the bottom of a movie poster are tiny, so don't be scared to make that super small, even like so small that it kind of blends in with the top build. Okay, great. So there's my movie poster. I am done. Now that we've finished, the last thing that we want to do is export this as a PDF, because that will be the best way that we can print the poster when it's done. So we're going to go up the top here to File, and we're going to go to Save As. Now we don't want to save it to Creative Cloud, we want to save it on the computer. So yours might look slightly different because I'm on a Mac, but click on your computer, save on your computer, and then we want to change that format to a Photoshop PDF, call it movie poster, save it somewhere where you are going to remember. Click Save. And click OK. And yeah, we want to make sure that it's set for high quality print, because that's going to be the best output for printing. Save PDF. This might take a minute depending on how many layers that you've got in there. And then there we have it.